All right, welcome to Frontline, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. And just when you thought there was no way things could get any more absurd, another judge proves us wrong. D.C. Judge Matthew Sharbaugh has released Melissa Ferris. That was the woman accused of vandalizing the World War II memorial. Prosecutors, led by attorney Judge Jeanine Pirro, argued that Ferris is a flight risk and asked the court to reverse the decision. But for now, she's out and about. Another day, another questionable decision from the bench. Plus, the plot was stopped. Now the sentence is in. The transgender suspect has been sentenced to 73 months in prison after pleading guilty to plotting to assassinate Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Ryan Michael English came clean about the deadly plans to officers and the entrance of the Capitol, where he was armed with a folding knife and 2 Molotov cocktails, if you can believe it. And President Trump is doubling down, I love this, on the America's claim to the Strait of Hormuz, posting on Truth Social a revised map of the area, labeling the waterway new U.S. territory. Later confirming no further talks with the Islamic Republic have been scheduled. But first, temporary. Keyword, temporary protected status, which a judge has now removed. Get to getting. I want my country, I want my customs, and I want my communities back. Let's do this. So, good news, we can start getting more people that shouldn't be here the hell out of this country. A court just lifted its own previous ban on the removal of Ethiopian temporary protected status people here, making now 13 countries that we have just free reign to get out of this country. I'm going to say this louder for the people in the back, or the socialists or Democrats, or they're all pretty much the same thing at this point. Nobody deserves to be here except for American citizens, and we have laws.
Respect for the right of human mobility, because it is a right. It is a right.
That's right.
Because we are standing on Native land, and Latino people are descendants of Native people, and we cannot be told and criminalized simply for our identity or our status.
Asylum is a human right.
Show me where in the Constitution it says asylum is a human right. Is it right next to health care, which, it's also not in there. No one has a right to come here. In fact, if you're breaking the law to get here, you're an illegal immigrant. And if you disagree with me on that, you're a moron. We've been in this business of giving literally everybody access to this country for too long, and it's costing so much money for people who actually pay the taxes. And my kids are paying the price by a garbage job market, inflation, higher costs of living, lower standards in schools and worse teacher ratios, and exploding health care costs because most of these illegals are using the emergency room as their primary care doctor and not paying the bill. Again, I'm not telling you anything new at home that you don't already know, but most of these people on temporary protected status ain't contributing that much to the economy. Places like Haiti, Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, Cameroon, never heard of it, Nepal, Honduras, Nicaragua, Venezuela, South Sudan, Burma, Somalia, Ethiopia are not exactly the breeding ground for the next brain surgeons of American healthcare systems. Look at the IQs of these countries. Haiti, 73, Syria, 78, Yemen, 68, Afghanistan, 76, Cameroon, 68, Nepal, 77, Honduras, 79, Nicaragua, 78, Venezuela, 81, South Sudan, 66, Burma, 83, Somalia, 68, Ethiopia, also 68. In fact, the top IQs among them are Venezuela and Burma, barely clearing 80. And everyone else hovers around or below what we here in the United States consider, and this is a medically defined threshold, mentally retarded. We take them in by our own good graces, and then it hurts American citizens. I'm so done with that stuff. Good, just be gone. When I voted for Donald Trump all 3 times on the basis of America first, I meant it.
A new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
Not just some slogan. I actually meant it, okay? And to all the bleeding heart liberals who think this is harsh or inconsiderate, stop. 1, because I don't care, but 2, because I don't see you welcoming any of these people in your homes. In fact, you pompous libs who claim the moral high ground on this, places like, oh, I don't know, Massachusetts. I seem to recall when Ron DeSantis flew a bunch of illegals that you were happy to see join the state of Florida. When he flew them into Martha's Vineyard, there was plenty of seasonal work for them to do there and stuff like that. But no, you Massachusetts people, you activated the National Guard at a ratio of 4-to-1 to the migrants and deported all of them. So don't tell me this is about, we owe them something. These highbrow libs who are in favor of these policies, they never invite them into their homes or their cities, or at least on their side of the city, in their suburbs. It's always, we should do this, but somewhere else. Look, am I sorry these people weren't born in America, which is undoubtedly the greatest blessing? Like, I am totally blessed to have been born American. Yeah, I mean, I wish they could. But do I feel bad that they have hardships in their war-torn country or wherever they're from? Sure, I'm not an animal. But it's not any more our problem than it is their problem in Burma that 17 to 25 veterans a day commit suicide. When that number becomes zero, then maybe we can start to have the discussion about helping people in other countries. But until every American citizen has a place to live, I don't want any of these people coming here to become a public charge, which is funny because that's actually part of a law. 8 U.S. Code 1182A4, I've told you about this before. Any alien who, in the opinion of the consulting officer at the time of the application for a visa, or in the opinion of the Attorney General at the time of application for admission or adjustment of status, is likely at any time to become a public charge, is inadmissible. An actual law. When someone immigrates here, their status shall not be approved if they are expected to become a public charge. If someone comes here in an inflatable boat with plastic sandals that you can buy at any local gas station and not an ounce of luggage, guess what? They're probably not coming here to design skyscrapers. We've talked about this in Ohio, where Haitians were given living subsidies that raised the rent for longtime residents, so much so that they were forced out of their own communities. A lot of them were making things cost more, too. Still are making things cost more. You know what? There was a new study out. It showed that there is a 1% cost increase for every American citizen on the dollar for every 1% of immigrants into our population. Remember when I told you how much inflation rose during Biden? This is the total inflation since January of 2019. Trump leaves office. Nearly 30% increase since 2019. Your dollar from January of 2019 is worth 70 cents today. That's the pain. So let's break down where the bulk of that pain came from. You see this line right here? That's where Trump 45 left office and Biden came in. Carry that over to the next line. This is all Biden's presidency. And this is where Trump came back in. So this is a 22% rise during Joe Biden for the cost to live. Weird that they also welcomed in simultaneously 20 million illegals into this country. Oh, I'm sure that's just a coincidence. The rest of the inflation was just residuals from, I don't know, printing $7 trillion for the bogus COVID scam. I understand why this is a difficult concept for the left to grasp. Maybe they do grasp it and they just want to destroy America, which is also possible. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit. I don't care about anybody from any other country until every American is taken care of here. I just don't. And I'm not sorry about that. America first is not a slogan. I literally went to war for this, okay? It is an actual fundamental belief of mine and probably, give or take, 70 million other people that voted for Donald Trump. There is zero reason for a single person living by the good graces of America to stay here unless they are contributing to our economy in a massive, massive way. Call me harsh, call me whatever you want, but I don't care. I would like to have my children have all the opportunities afforded to me as an American citizen and not backbench to somebody from Cameroon that I couldn't even point to on a map. So I hope Donald Trump charters every plane, train, and automobile to get these people the hell out of here. I will pay my taxes twice, actually, this year to fund this operation because the long-term benefits of this are a decrease in housing costs. Healthcare costs will go down dramatically, actually. Probably close to $1 trillion of fraud and expenditures will be completely eliminated. We know billions came, like $9 billion, came from just the Somali community in Minnesota alone. That'll be eliminated, and America could get back to doing America things rather than having to read front pages consumed by immigrants that, we've had to have a legitimate conversation about whether or not they may have eaten my neighbor's cats and dogs. General Counsel for the Department of Homeland Security, James Percival. All right, James, what you've done here is incredible work. How fast can we start the deportation of these people?
Well, we're already working on it. I mean, the first thing I would say, though, is I want your viewers to understand what a bait and switch this TPS program is, because this is what they would say. They would say it's dangerous for them to go right now. Let them take temporary protected status just for a little while, just until it's safe to return. And then what happens is they live here for a few years, and then we're told they're part of the community now. They can never leave. It's a huge grift they've been running on the American people, and President Trump finally stopped it, and we're going to keep working until we're done with it.
Well, sir, we actually had, like, Governor DeWine in Ohio was like, yeah, you know, these Haitians are an integral part of our healthcare community, and if we don't keep them here, I'm like, dude, are you a Republican or not? Like, you're advocating to keep 300,000 people, most of which are getting federal and state subsidies to live there, that prices people out of their own neighborhoods.
I mean, I think about when President Trump came down the elevator in 2016, what was going on there is that the American people were frustrated with both parties. And I think the president really tapped into something that we'd been very naive on the immigration issue for a very long time.
No, 100%. Well, obviously, DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, friend of this show, he's been, look, the left-wing media has tried to rake him through the coals, picking sentences here. I think he's doing a great job, okay? He's tweeted out that temporary protected status is just that, temporary. If you're an internation and your status has been terminated, which 13 countries now have, you are here illegally. You have two options, leave immediately or swiftly be deported. What is the capacity to carry this out in its entirety, you think?
Well, I mean, through the One Big Beautiful Bill, we got a ton of resources to carry this out. We are encouraging people, take the free flight home and the $2,600 check. It's a very good deal. That's a year's wages in Haiti. That's a lot better than ICE picking you up and taking you home, not on your own terms, without the chance to gather your belongings. So we're absolutely going to put all our resources into this mission, but we really think people should take the deal.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. 2,600 bones and you could go back to wherever. And I remember that all the left said that Haiti was such a beautiful place, so it shouldn't be a problem for them to go back. These judges, though, all right, judges have largely tried to stop a lot of this stuff. You have gone to the mat on the legal front to get this done, but you actually said we have been abundantly clear if immigration attorneys commit fraud for their clients, the attorneys will be fined. This week we issued a fine notice to some guy totaling over $470,000. This attorney filed 118 fraudulent documents before President Trump. I mean, that is illegal.
It is illegal, and for a long time, nobody did anything about it. I mean, the issue is this. You talked about it in your opening. This whole asylum thing from a lot of these countries is a total scam. These people are not going to be persecuted on a protected ground in their home country. They want to come here because it's the greatest country in the world. But for a very long time, people file these frivolous or even fraudulent asylum applications. They do it to gum up the works, to delay deportation, and to get work authorization. And for years, nobody ever went after the attorneys. But if attorneys are filing false documents, that is illegal, and there will be consequences.
Well, that's the other thing, too, is when you talk about asylum, all these people, oh, these poor people, we find out, like, to legal, and I'm not a lawyer, you are, sir, but to legally claim asylum, correct me if I'm wrong, it is, you have to have no other options of places to come through. And we've had millions of people that are on like caravans from like South Central America, and they had like, walk through 5 other countries before they get here.
That's absolutely right. Every single one of these countries they pass through is a party to the same treaties we are that require us to take in refugees. There's absolutely no reason they can't stop in any of those countries. And that's one of the points the president's been making for many years.
Yeah. Well, James, look, what you're doing is fantastic. We need people like you on the legal front. Much appreciated, sir. Thanks for saving America.
Hey, thank you for having me.
All right. Coming up. Do you own a second home? If you do, I'm sure you're paying property taxes, and that actually could be taxation without representation. So let's dump some tea in the harbor later in the show. But first, the desperate media flails in its own efforts to make low military morale some sort of thing at war. Why are they so desperate to make America look bad? Why don't they just make us look awesome while we're also over there being the most lethal force on the planet? We're going to discuss that with the man in charge, the U.S. Navy Secretary Hung Cao, next.
This was America in 1980, held in contempt by foreign nations. Across the world, people were losing their freedoms. So many countries thought America had seen its day, but we knew better. So we stopped complaining together and started working together. Today, America is strong again. We're looking to the future with confidence and pride. America's best days and democracy's best days lie ahead.
It's 2 a.m., your fever spiked and you're miserable. Here's your options.
Urgent care, closed. ER, slammed. And you'll spend hundreds of thousands in both. Telehealth, yeah, but the pharmacies are closed.
That's the reason why we keep emergency medical kits at home.
It has doctor-prescribed medication like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other antibiotics and antivirals. You can treat flu, pneumonia, strep, sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
Because if you're sick in at night, traveling or stranded, you don't want options.
You want what is inside this kit. No waiting, no pharmacy, and no copays.
Just schedule a quick telehealth call.
And that's how you feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
Every family should have this kit, and here's how to order yours.
Order online in minutes and use the promo code to save $45. Your doctor-prescribed kit ships fast to your door, packed with medications to treat over 30 conditions. So when something hits, you're ready. And a wellness company telehealth doctor is always there if you need guidance.
Every 8 minutes, a claim of sexual assault is filed against rideshare drivers.
But rideshare companies prohibit both drivers and riders from carrying firearms to protect themselves.
Imagine this banana was a less lethal device capable of incapacitating an attacker in a fraction of a second and allowing you to escape.
At Byrna, we don't sell bananas. Go to Byrna.com to find out how you can always be prepared to defend.
Well, a bunch of reporters that have never sacrificed anything in their lives are still whining over the deployment of the USS Abraham Lincoln and the invented narrative of somehow low morale on the ship. What Democrats and the corporate media and the legacy media and all these reporters are completely overlooking is that this was the single greatest combat experience of an aircraft carrier deployment probably in my lifetime. Navy Secretary Hung Kao said the media was painting sailors as victims, and that was dishonest. It's also highlighting what the crew accomplished. 266 days deployed, which in the grand scheme of things is not a massively long deployment. 200 days in combat zone, which means they weren't paying taxes on their paychecks too. Over 10,000 sorties, 1.5 million pounds of ordnance freedom delivered, and retention rates on the Abraham Lincoln are among the highest of all characters. Put that in your morale pipe. It's important to note also, when I was deployed at the highest levels of combat of the SEAL teams in 2007, that was also oddly the highest retention rate among the SEAL teams in that war. Huh, weird. CNN has led the absolute charge in painting conditions as dismal, but I just remember when they were reporting from that ship, I don't know, a month ago, they were there eating ice cream and playing cards with the sailors. And when they spoke to the ship's commander, he made it clear that the deployment's never been, that tough, but it is what you sign up for.
What kind of toll does that take on you personally?
It's tough. I said I had my first kid born in February, so very excited to get home, meet her.
And you don't know when you'll be able to do that?
We'll see. I mean, hopefully home soon, but unfortunately it's a common story on the ship, I think. Get in the Navy, this is what you kind of sign up for.
Acting Secretary of the U.S. Navy, Secretary Hung Kao. Sir, incredible deployment, obviously. Massive experience gained that will teach future generations for the next 30 years. Any idea where this whole thing originated from?
Well, it's an election year, Carl. This is the outrage comes out, right? I mean, no one talks about the USS Nimitz, who deployed for 270 days before Epic Fury, the USS Carl Vinson, who did it for 269 days, Harry S. Truman, that was getting shot at in the Red Sea by the Houthis using Iranian weapons for 252 days, Theodore Roosevelt before that for 264 days, and the Dwight D. Eisenhower for 277 days. It's just an election year, so let's pick on President Trump and what he's doing right now, which is freeing the world from these Iranian tyrannical lunatics.
Well, the other thing, too, is, there was no reporting under Barack Obama or even there wasn't really stop loss under Joe Biden, but under Barack Obama, there was no reporting of stop loss, despite the fact that is, an issue that's near and dear to yourself, sir, which is, suicide among service members and veterans. Stop loss caused massive suicide problems, and nobody talked about that under a Democrat until this deployment.
No, you're absolutely right. And you said that earlier, the re-enlistment rate on the Abe Lincoln is 84.4%, which is one of the highest we've ever seen.
It's really high. Yeah. So you also noted that the Abraham Lincoln, obviously a variety of things, experience, bomb dropping, retention, all these things. And I just couldn't help but think that, like, this is the War Department putting out ads like this now. Roll this, sir.
Their service has taught us not to seek war, but to prepare, to fight, and win. Peace through strength.
I imagine that the lethality is a much better seller than, some of this stuff that we saw earlier. Play it.
Begins in California with a little girl raised by 2 moms. Although I had a fairly typical childhood, took ballet, played violin, I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age.
I color me shocked that we have higher retentions now of warfighters, sir.
No, absolutely. The retention's been out the door, and also recruitment. Last year, we brought in over 8,000 new recruits above what we normally did. And this year, we're on track to bring in 11,000 more recruits in the Navy. Wow. So, yes, people just want, remember the hit on me they did that about alpha males and alpha females. Apparently, it's true. That's the kind of people we want, and those are the people we're attracting right now.
Yeah, but sir, you've been, and real quick, you were an EOD guy. You were the one who ran towards the bomb while guys like even me ran away from the bomb. You're not speaking off the cuff here, sir, about this stuff.
No, I mean, I've been deployed just like you have. No one said anything when I was in a FOB that was surrounded by HESCO barriers, and our front gate was an MRAP, and we get 2 MREs a day with 5 bottles of water. That's what we get. But none of us complained. When I was invading Iraq, my oldest son, who's now a 2nd lieutenant in the Marine Corps, was born. And I didn't get to see him till 6 or 7 months later. And that's just the name of the game. But the thing is, this is what we train for. This is what we want to do because we signed up for this.
Yeah, no, 100%, sir. It must be awesome to be able to boss him around the way you do now. Secretary Hung Kao, we appreciate it very much, sir.
Thank you, Carl.
All right, coming up, a huge win for gun owners in Texas and a ruling the DOJ just thankfully decided not to fight. We got 2A Tuesday coming up next.
It's our America. We built it. Courage, freedom. Millions go to Newsmax when they need to know. Start today on the free Newsmax app. Newsmax is real news for real people.
God, I'd kill for an old-fashioned. How do you do that?
Bonds. Corporate bonds.
Most people call leaf filter when their gutters are clogged and they notice one of the many issues that can bring. You can get ahead of costly damage by protecting your home's gutters today.
Schedule your free inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
Would you like a free family preparedness starter pack worth nearly $600? All you have to do is enter to win during My Patriot Supply's Road to Preparedness Challenge. You see, we're on a mission to ensure every American family stays prepared. That's why right now you can join the mission at mypatriotsupply.com and enter to win your own family starter pack. Go to mypatriotsupply.com today and enter to win. That's mypatriotsupply.com.
You can join the Tunnel to Towers mission to do good by donating your car to today's veterans. Your car donation will help Gold Star families, as well as injured veterans, our first responders, and our homeless veterans. Donating your car is quick and simple. Any car is accepted, and we will pick up the car for free. Simply call 844-BRAVES.
By donating your car, you can make a real difference. You can do good.
When Saturday rolls around, I don't want to jump through hoops to watch college football. Good thing DirecTV makes it easy to keep up with my favorite college teams. No hopping between apps or channels.
Stream college football without the hurdles on DirecTV.
What if your GLP-1 for weight loss was as easy to take as a mint? Small, discreet, and easy. Think about that. No needles. This is compounded tirzepatide, a mint-flavored tablet designed to fit into your daily routine. You simply let it dissolve under your tongue. A simple daily tablet. as easy to take as a mint.
Save $50 with promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
Pain kept slowing me down. Then I tried new KT Menthol pain relief patches. Unlike other patches that only mask pain, KT increases blood flow to help accelerate healing. So don't give up. Tape up. New KT Menthol pain relief patches.
Today's AI capabilities can make your head spin. But for scammers, it's the ultimate tool. They're using AI to exploit tech gaps and slip past traditional security. PCmatic keeps your information private and devices safe with online security solutions developed in America to protect Americans. Built for homes, businesses, and government agencies. Secure 5 devices for just $50 for your first year. Get online protection at PCmatic.com.
All right, it's 2A Tuesday, so let's do some gun stuff. For decades, the government has made Americans, unconstitutionally, jump through hoops to legally own things like suppressors and short-barreled rifles with onerous federal registration, ATF pre-approval paperwork, and that infamous $200 tax stamp. But now, one gun rights groups, who I happen to be a card-carrying member of them, tore down that wall of government red tape. Gun Owners of America, which actually filed the lawsuit behind this challenge, argued that once Congress reduced that NFA tax to zero, the government could no longer use that tax as the justification for keeping the rest of those restrictions in place, much like the reverse of Obamacare, actually. A federal judge in Texas agreed that the DOJ had 7 days to challenge the ruling after he overruled it, and they didn't. So for the gun owners covered by this ruling, suppressors and certain other firearms can now be acquired without going through the old NFA registration and pre-approval process. Now, GOA is calling the decision a major win because this isn't just about a $200 tax stamp that nobody wanted to pay and should never have been charged in the first place. It's about the government, whether or not they should be able to bury a constitutional right under layers of paperwork and fees and bureaucratic approval. Bureaucracy 1, bureaucracy 0, GOA. I don't want to say one because they helped me win my lawsuit in New York, too. All right, Director of Federal Affairs for Gun Owners of America, Aidan Johnston, and host of Bearing Arms Cam and Company podcast, Cam Edwards. Aidan, you and I got to speak out there in Iowa recently on stuff like this. Major win, brother.
Thanks for having me on, Carl. This is perhaps the greatest restoration of Second Amendment rights in U.S. history. For 92 years, you would go to prison for 10 years and suffer a $250,000 fine if you transferred or bought a suppressor without filling out that unconstitutional registration paperwork. And for the first time since 1934, 2 GOA members were able to get unregistered suppressors down in Texas last week. Yeah. This is a major win for the Second Amendment, and we are so proud to have been a part of it at GOA.
Hell yeah. You know, Cam, this is something, though, that chips away at a lot of onerous restrictions like fully automatic weapons, too.
Well, it doesn't directly deal with machine guns, but it does deal with short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, the, quote, any other weapons. And, you know, I think, Carl, what this does is it strengthens the argument against the NFA in general, right? Now it can show, I think, that these items like suppressors, short-barreled firearms, these are in common use for lawful purposes, right? And then, of course, the next step, I think, really is to go after the remaining item on the NFA that folks are, I think, concerned about, and that would be machine guns. There's no historical tradition of banning firearms in this country based on a rate of fire, but I think that's going to be a little bit bigger challenge. And this, again, is a huge step forward.
Now, Aidan, I know you guys have stepped into a number of lawsuits at GOA, but Saturday, Connecticut, their state firearm background check computer system, it went down in the morning and it stayed down for most of the day. Now, there was one dealer that set up like a huge event around this, and it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit. And they were like, oh, well, like at some point you have to say, too bad, we're selling them anyway.
Well, look, background checks are completely unconstitutional. At GOA, we say a right delayed is a right denied. And the fact that the system can just go down over the weekend and so everyone in an entire state can't exercise their Second Amendment is totally a violation of everyone in that state's Second Amendment rights. So we just need to do away with that. Criminals aren't buying, guns and going through background checks. It's just not a helpful system, and GOA would support repealing that.
You know, Cam, there's something that I've heard you talk about before, which is the restoration, and this is AG Todd Blanche, finalizing this regulation that creates a pathway for nonviolent and, approved felons to pursue the restoration of their Second Amendment rights.
Yeah, this is huge. I'm actually going to be talking with the DOJ pardon attorney, Ed Martin, on Cam and Company tomorrow about this restoration process. But this is significant. I mean, for several decades now, there's supposedly been this process going through ATF, but Congress has essentially defunded that program. So DOJ said, you know what, we're taking it back, and we're going to run it through the Attorney General's office. So starting in about, I think it's about 45 days, the first tranche of individuals will be able to apply to have their rights restored. As you say, nonviolent felons, they are more likely to be approved. If you have a violent felony, there's a presumption that you are disqualified from regaining your rights, sometimes permanently, sometimes it's a period of 10 years. And it is a pretty extensive process. It's not guaranteed, but the process hasn't existed before now. So this really is historic.
Yeah, and we promised you guys that we would always start ending this on a good guy with a gun. Police say a homeowner, Aidan, found an intruder in his house. Then the two reportedly fought, then pulled guns and exchanged gunfire, with the alleged intruder succumbing to his wounds. I say a masterclass in FAFO. What do you say, sir?
Well, look, I think the intruder here actually had a restraining order against him, and this just goes to show how gun control doesn't work. You're not going to actually prevent bad guys from doing bad things or getting firearms, and the only thing that ended up stopping this guy here was the good guy shooting back.
Yeah, and we told you guys yesterday, 300,000 to 3 million a year people saved by good guys with guns. Aidan, Cam, we appreciate both of you.
Thanks for having us on.
All right, 3 big primaries taking place today: Florida, Wyoming, and Alaska. In Florida, much of the focus is on the race between the governor, mostly between Trump-backed Congressman Byron Donalds and current Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins, because Ron DeSantis is term limited. Current governor has declined to endorse anybody in this race, so it's a toss-up. Another interesting race is that of the House District 25 down there. It's this newly drawn district where current Congressman Jared Moskowitz is running against one of these crazy DSA people, Oliver Larkin, who launched his campaign criticizing Markowitz's support for the Laken-Riley Act. Wow. Okay, that's his platform. Another interesting race taking place in Alaska where 2 Dan Sullivans, they're both named Dan Sullivan. How's that? One current senator, another backed by Democrats to confuse Republicans, are among the candidates of the U.S. Senate. The top 4, they've got this messed up voting system up there. The top 4 who qualify in the state's ranked choice voting will progress to November, where literally the person who does not get the most votes could actually win in their stupid style. Be sure to keep it here on Newsmax throughout the night. First, with special debate from the Republican candidate Senate, Darlene Graham and Ralph Norman in South Carolina, immediately following this show. And later tonight, Newsmax wraps up primary results with special coverage beginning at 10 p.m. with my man B-Train Bob Brooks and Chris Lenzo. Coming up, we told you not to trust the polls, and now we have a perfect example why, dare I say, a poll. One survey shows a double-digit lead is being called bogus by the very company that created the poll. All that and more in our Culture Clash next.
A new president is sworn in. America's greatness is restored. Millions of Americans are tuning in to Newsmax. Even President Trump says Newsmax is terrific. Watch Newsmax or download our free app on your TV or phone today.
So Dale, you really need to get that colon cancer screening.
Dad, it's been forever. I need to be in there. Wrap it up. Come on, Dad. It's been forever.
How much longer?
It's been an hour. Are you done yet?
Dale, don't worry. We can do it with just a blood test. Shield.
Okay, let's do it.
Shield is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk for colon cancer. Ask your doctor about FDA-approved Shield from the company trusted in blood tests for cancer for over a decade.
As history's preeminent expert on emergency communication, I fully endorse Rapid Radios. They are the only nationwide license-free push-to-talk walkie-talkies without any monthly fees. That's right, you get access to most carriers' networks without a contract. With Rapid Radios, you can communicate instantly from this Washington to that one. Isn't that right, George?
Darn straight. And I don't lie. That's my thing.
Now I know what you're thinking. I don't need no fancy highfalutin walkie-talkie. I've got a cell phone. Cell phones are notoriously unreliable during emergencies. And when you're in the middle of nowhere. Plus, rapid radios are great for remote adventures, emergency preparedness, and workplace communications, and for keeping in touch with your loved ones.
Hey, Pa. Over.
You make me so proud, son. Over. Get your family connected with Rapid Radios today.
Go to rapidradios.com and get up to 60% off today. Plus, free shipping. Rapid Radios. The best way to stay connected.
Hey, I'm Dr. Drew. Our cells oxidize, and fatty 15 reduces that risk. C15 is the longevity nutrient. I take this nutrient. My family takes the nutrients. You should too. Fatty 15 has benefits that people actually see and feel.
While this banana may not save you from someone breaking into your home, Berna's banana helped one vet repel an intruder in his.
This huge guy, 6'5", 6'6", just barreled through my front door. I have my Berna and my Glock. I always go for the Berna first. I've seen enough death and destruction to last 2 lifetimes. Here is the perfect item I can have, feel totally safe, and know I'm not going to kill anybody.
At Berna, we don't sell bananas, we sell peace of mind.
If you're about to replace your roof, stop. There's a solution about 80% less expensive. 9 out of 10 roofs can be saved by Newsmax. Guaranteed to extend the life of your current roof by 5 to 15 years at a fraction of the cost of a new roof. Newsmax's deep penetrating power restores flexibility and water protection. Nobody wants to replace their roof. Restore it instead with Newsmax for 80% less.
See you Sunday, Jim. Whoa! Delivery.
Thanks, Kurt.
You like that? See you Sunday, Jim.
Sunday.
See you Sunday. See you Sunday.
See you Sunday.
I just got my pilot's license. See you Sunday.
The whole town can feel it. Sunday's coming.
The NFL on CBS, streaming all season on Paramount+.
See you Sunday.
That's my boy Cam Skyboo.
Whoa!
Finally, a little transparency in the censorship game. Elon Musk says that X will now make it clear when government comes a-knocking, asking for a post to be removed or account restricted. Anything the government asks for on or off record will now be known about, and I am so here for it. We saw this movie during COVID when big government officials and big tech were working behind the scenes to decide what Americans could or could not say online. Well, now Elon says enough is enough, and he's pulling back the curtain. He's going to let users see exactly who is making those requests and why. If the government wants something censored, well, the public deserves to know who's doing the asking. Host of Tony Katz Today, Tony Katz himself, and Newsmax contributor Kay Smythe. Tony, I mean, like, this guy legitimately saved free speech.
Well, we've known about this for a while, and even if we don't agree with him on everything, the buying of Twitter changed the game because we got to see, I mean, this is what he's talking about now. We got to see under the hood.
Yep.
We got to see what was actually happening, how they were suppressing us, how they were silencing us, how they were shadow banning us, and how they were preventing us from having conversations. So this is very good. Why should it be on Elon? Why should it be on the platform? Who's making us do these things here? Here's who's doing this to you, the individual who wants to engage. I love every bit of this. I'm told that the more transparency, the better. So bring on the sunlight.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always here for the sunlight. Kay, I want you to get a load of this, though. This is what I was talking about earlier. A poll by Median Strategies claiming that Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass was leading council member Nithya Raman by like this wide margin. Turns out that poll was totally fake. Median Strategy, as a result of this, has announced that it's stopping its polling project. And I was like, good idea, because this is the same polling company that had Francesca Hong with like a 23-point lead over David Crowley and then lost.
Let me ask you guys, when was the last time either of you received a phone call or, was sent anything to be polled in any way?
What I want for dinner tonight. That was basically.
Yeah, I never answered.
But this is what I mean. We've known since the 2016 election that polls are absolutely bogus. They don't really mean anything. And I'm a social science researcher. I spend all day, well, not so much right now because I got a baby, but before the baby, I spent all day, every day, asking people questions about stuff. Do you know, of all those thousands of people that I've asked questions about stuff, how many of them have been polled? Literally none of them. So anytime I see a poll, I just go, yeah, this is garbage. I don't need it. Don't need it anywhere near what I'm doing. It's not relevant. Can't use it in any of my work because I know it's fake news.
Yeah.
Polls are fake news.
Yeah, right. They always come out and they look actually ridiculous at the end of it, but they just keep doing them. And it turns out, Tony, that 99% of polls agree with the people who are funding them. But California is also coming for your stuff again, Tony. All right, I know you don't live in California, but if you did, the California Energy Commission just unanimously approved new rules that will phase out the sale of replacement tires that, quote, don't meet the state's energy efficiency standard. It's a tire. It's a tire. What is the energy standard? And are they going to replace every municipal truck tire?
I hope all the Jeep owners out there understand how rough this is going to be for them. The argument is that when you buy a new car, they put on the most energy efficient tire they can because it's like they have you come to a stop and the car stops, right? It stops running and you hit the gas and all of a sudden the engine goes back on, drives everybody crazy, and they hate it, the auto off feature, right? So now the idea is we have to ensure the energy efficiency to save Mother Gaia. So we'll limit the kinds of tires that can be purchased. They call it a kilonewton, right? The type of energy that it takes to actually stop. They want to bring that down to make sure the tires are more energy efficient. The state reckons that it's going to cost an extra $6.50 a tire. Now, none of us are economists, but we've all lived in this world. The less you have of something, the more expensive it becomes. Yes. So the tire manufacturers are telling you this is going to go up by hundreds of dollars a tire, and the state is saying you're going to save $79 over 4 months in gas consumption. And that's an insane bit of mathematics. It's not going to work out. The state once again will be wrong, and they'll say, well, the problem is those greedy tire companies are charging too much.
And meanwhile, you have Saudi Arabia literally burning, I don't know, like 100 acres of tire at a time. Screw you, California. But Kay, this is like the congestion tax where Kathy Hochul was like, we're putting this like $9 fee in for you to drive south of 60-something street, and it's going to improve air quality. It'll save the world. It turns out it actually didn't do any of that. It had absolutely no effect on the number of cars. The only effect was small businesses are now paying more for delivery.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole climate change cult for you right there. Because it is a cult. Because the whole point of a cult, right, is so that the person at the top can make loads and loads of money and just lie to, anywhere from like a few to a few thousand people about what they're actually doing. That is climate change. That is the whole purpose of the climate change cult, is to enrich a small group of people at the top who just so happen to be predominantly Democrats and globalists. And we can go full tinfoil hat with this. But this is so emblematic of the stupidity of the Democrat platform and the sadness and heartbreak I feel when I see people I thought were smart, people I thought were intelligent, falling for this stuff. They go, oh no, I'm happy to pay more. It's better for the climate. Planet Earth doesn't care about us. It can chew us up, spit us out. Nothing we do has an impact.
Nope.
That
and that's
is
why
science.
they cut down the rainforest to build highways for climate conferences. Kay, Tony, appreciate both of you.
See you later.
All right, coming up, property taxes on a second home are pretty unconstitutional. I'm going to tell you my legal argument next.
Where's the admission desk at your hospital? You may need it sooner than you think. It's the middle of the night and you, your spouse, or your child is sick, high fever, can't keep anything down, and getting worse. Now you're waiting in the ER, and everyone gets seen before you. And when I finally see you and order prescriptions, you still have to wait for your pharmacy to open and hope they have what I prescribed. This is the medical emergency kit. It's stocked with essential medications, including amoxicillin, generic Z-Pak, and ivermectin. Now you have the right medications when you need them. And it's why I and so many of my colleagues have medical emergency kits. It's like having an urgent care and pharmacy in your home. Just fill out a brief online medical intake and your kit, prescribed by a licensed provider, is shipped to your door. Here's how to order.
Order your kit now and save $45. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news. That's urgentcarekit.com/news.
Many Holocaust survivors are impoverished and suffering today in their final years.
At this Holocaust museum in Israel, you see the names, the faces of Jews that were brutally murdered. This great cloud of witnesses cries out to us, comfort, comfort my people.
We're in a race against time to reach every Holocaust survivor in Israel and the former Soviet Union. Many are poor and hungry, and they have nowhere to turn. Naroj has had such a hard life from the day that she was born into the Holocaust.
We were so hungry that we would go with my mother and find leaves and grass, and we would pick them up and eat it.
Still today, she's suffering with no one there to help her. Dare we turn our back on her now?
For $25, you can rush a food box to a Holocaust survivor or an elderly Jew.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews brings them urgently needed food and comfort in their final years.
Let's do what we know God has called us to do. Call the number on your screen now and help save Jewish lives. No organization helps Holocaust survivors and the elderly Jewish people as much as they do.
Valeria is saying that she didn't receive love her whole life.
You seem so full of love and not of hate.
Just $25 helps to rush a food box to a Holocaust survivor.
I hope you'll join me at International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. We can do something to relieve their suffering. Please do something now.
Let's talk about property taxes. I hate them, and you should too. They are theft, and I believe that they're unconstitutional. However, why the government is allowed to keep charging you taxes for something you bought every single year, essentially making you never own your property full out, is beyond me. But here we are. And of course, making news today is Ma'am Danny's new assault on property taxpayers. In fact, there's a city council on second home taxes going on, and he's breaking tradition because he's not even going. Most likely because he doesn't want to get stuff thrown at him by most of the people who are going to attend. Don't worry. He's sending a written statement. He essentially wants to charge people who don't live full-time in the city more taxes on that property. This is like blindly ignorant, because if I own the second home or a crash pad in the city because I work late 3 nights a week, I am immediately going to sell that thing under this policy. But the first problem is that a lot of those people actually do use that as their primary residence, and the government screwed up. The lawsuits that are no doubt forthcoming are going to state that you should never have to prove that you're actually a resident of somewhere that you already live. All that aside, the notion of being taxed at all on a second home, let alone taxed more, I believe to be massively unconstitutional. So let's just dump some tea in the harbor, shall we? The American Revolution was fought in significant part over the principle that taxes should not be imposed without the consent of the governed through representation. Now, the Declaration of Independence and colonial protests, including things like the Stamp Act and all that, were framed as no taxation without representation. Colonies were not adequately represented to the crown, and therefore they said, screw you guys, check out my guns. Applying this, though, to second home ownership specifically. Now, you are compelled by law to pay local property taxes that fund schools and roads and police and fire protection and other services, and the jurisdiction where you have no vote for the officials who set the tax rates and approve the budgets or decide spending priorities. Your property is subject to the jurisdiction's police power, zoning, assessments, and maybe a lien or foreclosure. Yet you have essentially, you're literally a second-class citizen there because you have no vote over the people who make those decisions. It's a constitutional structural mismatch, and the tax burden falls on non-residents owners, while electoral accountability runs only to residents. Follow me here? Check this out. There have been plenty of court cases that show similar but not exact situations like Washington, D.C., with no federal representation for residents that still pay federal taxes. In Herald v. District of Columbia, the Supreme Court rejected the argument that federal taxation of D.C. residents without congressional representation violated the Constitution. They said, quote, there is no constitutional provision which so limits the power of Congress that taxes can be imposed only upon those who have political representation, specifically referring to Congress in their decision. Now, the federal taxes, because residents still have a federal vote. But in all my searches, I could not find a single legal challenge to a second home ownership property taxes case. Now, municipalities have long argued that property taxes are generally treated as taxes on the property. My argument to that is, okay, my land doesn't go to work 5 days a week, 6 days a week. And if the lawn doesn't pay the taxes, I have to. Or they take my property, right? And again, I don't get to vote for the people who are deciding what the taxes are. And I'm taking this to an extreme. What if the majority of a certain municipality were seasonal vacation homes, which we know we have in America? I mean, look, Florida's like the #1 state of that. There are towns that are mostly vacationers. Essentially, taxes and policies would be made by the minority of the property owners in the population, which goes back to a non-democratic system, which is what our framers sought to get away from. Remember, the constitutionality of anything is based on historical precedent, which can include the intent of our founding documents at the time they were written, which at the time, property taxes were measured by the value in which land produced. That's the origin of property taxes going back even before America, 3,000 years ago to the Pharaoh, which, by the way, they only paid 20% for slaves. Slaves paid 20%. Now we pay 50. Great job. Not on some, it was never based on some nominal value that like some bureaucrat in a back room decided. I think I'd win this argument on historical precedent. Look, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but every year I write a check for the taxes on my farm. But it's not like a glorious mansion. It's a hunting cabin. It's a house I built with my own 2 hands. And I keep thinking that I've never been invited to a town meeting. I've never cast a vote for the people making these decisions. And all I hear from them is some demand about this or demand about that, about a changing policy that, again, I didn't vote for. They know they don't answer to me. And while many of the folks I've spoken with in town, they're perfectly pleasant people, there have been clear attempts by this town to target me for unfair tax reasons that I have to go then and sort out and win. It's a town where, state police patrol the roads, which I already pay state taxes because I'm already a resident of Connecticut. The fire department is volunteer, and there's no public utilities in the whole town outside of the 5-building town center. I think all taxes are theft, but in exchange for services, look, I'll agree to not start a militia to fight against unreasonable taxes yet. I am a reasonable person for the most part, but when taxes keep getting raised, it becomes super burdensome. My level of services, they never go up. Actually, they usually go down. They just reassessed my property, which doubled my taxes, and nothing changed on my property or services. No new sales in the town drove those prices up. They just do these things, folks. And that's my problem. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll just recreationally decide to hire a lawyer and go after these people. Doesn't sound a whole of, by, and for the people-y, the way they have it set up now. Who knows? Whatever. All right, before we go, folks, we've warned about the dangers of AI. Now, one tech giant might have given AI another reason to dismiss humanity. Next.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
Nobody knows Corvettes like McMulkin Chevrolet, the world's largest Corvette dealer for 5 consecutive years. Set apart by its name alone, Corvette delivers a legacy of American craftsmanship, and a vehicle that sets the bar for performance cars deserves a buying experience that beats it. With hundreds of Corvettes in stock and ready for immediate delivery nationwide, it's no wonder Corvette enthusiasts from across the USA keep coming back to McMulkin Chevrolet.
My husband is Miguel Cervantes, who was a firefighter with the Rancho Cucamonga Fire District. That's what he absolutely loved. My husband's cancer is directly related to his service as a firefighter. My immediate thought after he was gone was, how am I gonna do this? Tunnel to Towers said that it would be their honor to help me out by covering my mortgage. To say that it's been a weight lifted off my shoulder would be an understatement.
IRAs and 401ks were designed to account for a 2% rate of inflation. The idea was you could apply a 4% withdrawal rate and it would last. Inflation is at 3.8%, but when you account healthcare, insurance, food, and energy, The real rate is 8%. Gold's role isn't to make you rich. It's to help you survive what's coming. Call Patriot Gold Group at 1-800-778-4156. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide. The only firm nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the America 250 no fee for life IRA. Call 1-800-778-4156 and see how easy it is to protect your IRA with physical gold and silver. Call now, 1-800-778-4156.
We wanted transparency, but we couldn't find it. So we started Good Ranchers to reconnect the American family to the American farm. All of our meat is 100% born, raised, and harvested right here on American soil. But good sourcing is just the beginning. We go the extra mile to take stuff off your plate. Pre-trimmed cuts, easy thaw bags, fully cooked options.
Ooh, yeah, this is good.
And it's good for you. No antibiotics, no added hormones, no seed oils, no gluten, no funny business.
Almost half of women runners say safety is their biggest concern.
Majority of us have to constantly change routes, start times.
Instead of thinking of my pace, we worry about being followed, unwanted attention, and stuff that is simply scary.
Imagine this banana was a less lethal device, capable of incapacitating an attacker, letting you get to safety.
At Byrna, we don't sell bananas. Go to Byrna.com to find how you can always safely make it to the finish line.
You're grounded.
You're gonna ground me? When you're 45 and you haven't even screened for colon cancer.
I'm busy. I promised your mother I'd fix the sink 3 years ago.
The Cologuard Plus test is non-invasive, with no prep.
And it detects 95% of colon cancers, similar to colonoscopy.
Now that's thinking inside the box.
False positive and negative results may occur. The Cologuard Plus test is not for those at high risk.
This should be interesting. Google's buying all of Spirit Airlines' data to feed it to its AI model. So if Gemini suddenly starts losing faith in humanity, you know why. Spirit halted all operations in May and has been selling assets since, obviously announcing, and it agreed to sell this stuff to Google for $10 million. By the way, that includes all your personal contact information if you've ever flown on Spirit, which I have not. What's included? Company emails, internal communications, spreadsheets, even HR information on it. I wonder if this includes passenger complaints, because that might cause Gemini to just have a short circuit. Google might, though, be onto something. I'd love to see what Spirit management was saying about certain airline passengers, their fist fighting in the aisles, leaky bathrooms, being struck with gunfire when they were leaving Haiti. Stick around, though. We'll find out in a couple days. Anyway, we got the South Carolina Republican Senate runoff debate coming up right now. Special coverage. Greta's going to take it away in about 5 seconds.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.